It's the Raw Meat Podcast, the most mediocre wrestling podcast on the internet. With the smart Greg Adams, the nature boy Jay Watley, and the hardcore icon Puff.
It is the Raw Meat Podcast. Greg Adams and Puff, after quite a long break. We'll call it our summer vacation, I guess, if you will.
Sure.
What, last time we talked was 4th of July, right?
Yeah, I think so. The U.S. champion
Yeah, we did an impromptu podcast on the 4th of July, and then we've had some summer vacation, and we've got more coming. But we have some really big WWE news that we need to stop the world to talk about, because next week but WWE will be naming the general managers for both Raw and SmackDown, and then the draft will be taking place on the first ever live
Tuesday.
SmackDown on Tuesday.
I'm excited.
And we have been sitting here racking our brains trying to figure out how we could do a fantasy draft podcast when we don't know the rules or parameters of the draft.
Yeah, we'll just spitball.
But this has been something that's been annoying me for quite a while now, is there's little nuggets that they drop about the draft, and you hear the things that, Michael Cole and Byron Saxton are trying to convey to us about the draft. We know that some tag teams could get split up, but we don't know how.
See, I like that, though. The element of surprise, little nuggets, enough to keep you following the trail. But
the element of surprise only works when you know what's going on. Like, the elements of surprise in the NFL draft are great because you know the structures of what's going on. And when somebody bends that as far as they need to get something done, it's awesome and it's surprising.
I'm sure it's not going to be very much different, if different at all, from the original draft structure,
which we were researching as we were getting ready to put this fantasy draft together, and what we saw were Ric Flair and Vince McMahon going back and forth drafting, and they would draft teams or factions when they wanted to, but if they wanted an individual from a tag team, they were able to just pick that individual.
Yep.
So Ric Flair chooses the NWO, and he gets Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and X-Pac. Where, was it Vince then drafted
Hogan,
but you had, I think it was Vince that took Bubba Ray in the same draft, right? Or not Bubba Ray, JBL.
I think so.
They separated JBL and Farouk from the APA in that same draft, in which Chuck and Billy, with Billy Gunn, was drafted as a team because they were the champions.
My favorite tag team of all time.
That's a bold-faced lie. You're just saying that for shock value.
Well, it's my favorite tag team in the sense that Breezango or whatever is my favorite tag team right now.
Which, because it's the same tag team pretty much, just less steroids
and more comedy.
So what we think we figured out is a way to do this draft where we're going to go round by round, and we will say what we think is going to happen for both Raw and SmackDown. And we can chime in for what we would like to see happen and why what we would want to happen would make sense. But we're just going to do it from a standpoint of this is how we envision what we're predicting. How about that? We're going to predict what we see next week. So I'm going to write down these two, and I'll give you first pick. So I've got on my list here, so we can keep track of this and we can discuss it after the draft takes place. In round 1 of the draft, how do you see it playing out? We'll estimate that Raw gets the first pick.
Okay. I think Seth Rollins goes to Raw. And I think, let me see here. If I was picking SmackDown, who would I choose? I think with Daniel Bryan, who I think is a shoo-in for the GM.
Yep.
I think it's going to be an earth-shattering pick. And I honestly believe with the number 1 draft pick for SmackDown, we see Finn Balor.
Really?
Dude, the build-up with Shane has been, we're pushing the limit. We're all about building the future. You're talking about a guy who's never been there. Talk about, a punch in the teeth. And then, Stephanie, of course, can look at that and go, ha, 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 you stupid, stupid man, even though Finn Balor's going to end up being like the biggest star in the world. But that's a different story.
So I get the SmackDown idea of them going towards the future and going to be the cool brand, but the way that I see this going is if Raw gets the first pick, whoever gets the first pick, and because we said it will be Raw this time around, I think the first pick is going to be
Dean Ambrose.
Well, here's the caveat. It's going to be the champion.
Oh, that's right. They have a championship match Monday night.
So,
that was my reason for picking Seth Rollins. Now you just reminded me of my logic in having Seth Rollins at number 1.
So I will say right now that the number 1 overall pick to Raw or SmackDown will be Dean Ambrose. But if Seth Rollins wins on Monday night, then Seth Rollins is the number 1 overall pick. So I will just put a line that says the champ as the number 1 overall pick, and it will go to whoever gets, for our argument, Dean Ambrose to Raw. Then on SmackDown, I think that the number 1 pick, and I understand they're looking to the future, Shane is the one leading, all of that nonsense. Being that it's the first ever live SmackDown, they're setting a tone. Being that it's like 20 minutes outside of Boston, and being that they need a marquee on this show, I think John Cena is your number 1 overall draft pick to SmackDown.
See, he's going part-time, and for a brand like that, hey, we need all these guys. We're so big and awesome. You can't have a part-timer who's not going to work house shows and do all the little things.
Now, your number 1 draft pick in this kind of setting doesn't represent who you are 6 months from now. It represents the spark and the marquee that you give it today. So if John Cena is drafted to SmackDown, that may actually be the headline that we walk away from this. If Seth Rollins or Dean Ambrose gets picked number 1 overall, I don't think ESPN is covering it. But John Cena just hosted the ESPYs.
Well, they're going to cover John Cena no matter what John Cena does because he's John Cena.
So I'm saying if SmackDown wants to make a splash, your number 1 overall draft pick to SmackDown, John Cena. I think it makes sense, and I would totally do it. Number 2, though, if Rollins is 1 on SmackDown or on Raw, who's number 2?
On Raw?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be John Cena. And then on SmackDown, I think it's Dean Ambrose.
Makes sense. Now, you think it's Rollins with the belt, Ambrose without the belt. So a beltless Ambrose, number 2 to SmackDown.
Yep.
Okay. I think your number 2 pick on Raw is going to be the inverse of whoever loses that championship match on Monday. So if the champ is Dean Ambrose, he goes number 1. If Rollins is a champ, he goes number 1. Whoever loses that match goes number 2. So your top 2 picks are Rollins and Ambrose for Raw. Then on SmackDown, I think that you're going to start looking to the future, and you're going to either do this the way they did before, where you pick the NWO as a whole faction and you get 3 members, or they're going to have to do it individually. So I'm going to say it's either the club as a whole or just AJ Styles. And I think that gives you that second marquee name, that indie name, the guy who can carry the promotion when John Cena's only part-timing it. And it also gives you the hottest rivalry outside of a championship picture that's going on right now. So without a belt even on your show, you've got a gigantic rivalry now, and it makes everybody happy.
That is a good thought.
All right, so 3 after Rollins and Cena. So you've got 4 guys off the board between the 2 brands, and you've got Rollins and Cena to Raw.
I do.
Who's third?
The club. See, I got it flipped on what you think. As far as that goes, I think both those, the club and Cena, will be on the same show. I just think that show will be Raw.
Okay. So after Finn Balor and Dean Ambrose, who's the 3rd pick for SmackDown?
Sami Zayn. Actually, no. That's number 4. Oh, we're on round 3, right?
Yes.
I'm taking Cesaro.
Oh. That's not where I thought that was going. Interesting, though. Makes sense, though, because, I mean, he's one of the hottest stars who doesn't have a belt on, so that makes total sense. For Raw, this is where I start to wonder, because this is where the Roman Reigns suspension comes into play. In a perfect world, this would be the Roman Reigns spot. This would be where Roman Reigns goes to Raw, and you have the whole Shield there. They're going to be the ones fighting back and forth all the way until WrestleMania. But if they delay anything with Roman and don't want to give him the push during the draft because they don't want to talk about the suspension on screen, then I think you see Charlotte here.
Interesting.
But I think I'm going to write down Roman Reigns. I just want it to be out there that I think you could see Charlotte as high as number 3. And then to SmackDown, there are other guys that I think would be more marquee, but I think there's going to be a point where they have a gold rush, where there are people with belts that have to be sent to certain shows to have gold on those shows. I think the third pick will be New Day, and I want them to do it as a whole because I don't want that team split up in any way.
The Wyatts might have something to say about that.
But I think that you have tag gold and some of the hottest merch sellers, some of the best on mic. They go to SmackDown. They automatically make SmackDown must-see because they're sitting over there. So I think New Day at 3 over to SmackDown. So 4th round, Raw, you've got Rollins, Cena, The Club. SmackDown, you have Finn Balor, Dean Ambrose, Cesaro. Who's your number 4 pick to Raw?
Number 4 is the Intercontinental Champion of the World, The Miz.
I like that. I like that a lot.
And on the flip side, also with gold going to SmackDown, is Zack Ryder.
Oh, wait. So you're saying that you believe Zack Ryder is going to defeat Rusev on Monday night?
Yes.
So you think there will be 2 title changes on Monday night before the draft happens?
Hey, what a way to shake it up, right?
I love it.
Ratings have been dropping. They need to do something ballsy. What's ballsier than having title changes on television?
2 title changes on TV the night before a draft, which they want to make must-see.
Well, they keep on saying the big thing Michael Cole's been pushing over the past couple of weeks is, these guys are fighting for their position. They need to grab wins and gold and blah, blah. Hey, what's a better way to take a guy that probably wouldn't even make the draft on TV and all of a sudden put him in a top 5 draft pick? You make him champion.
So I love that. I think it's too smart for them, so I don't see it happening.
You said the same thing about the Ambrose Asylum.
I did. I said the exact same thing. It's too smart for them, and then they did it. So at number 4, just like I think there's a potential flip-flop with 1 and 2 for Raw, I think there's a flip-flop potentially between 3 and 4. If Charlotte doesn't go 3, she goes 4. If she doesn't go 4, that's because she went 3. So I'm going to say Charlotte at the 4th pick for Raw. And I in the context of storytelling, I think you may see like Shane shoot a look across at Steph like, oh, you want to take Charlotte. You want that to be your diva. Then I think this is where you may see that shakeup that you were looking for with Finn Balor, number 1 on SmackDown. Why not Bayley? Why not Bayley? Somebody who's already got a proven commodity as far as...
Because I think they're going to hold her for a while, but that would be an awesome pick.
I would love it.
I think Sasha gets picked. Sasha and Charlotte are going to be the 2 females off the board first.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. I'm going to put a line through that, and I'm going to say Sasha. But the thing that I don't like there is that you separate those 2. I would love, honestly, to see the women not eligible for the draft and the women's division kept on Raw exclusively. That's the way I would like to see it done. But I'm going to put them in here because I have a feeling they're going to draft them, which means you're going to stretch that talent pool thin, which means a Bayley's going to have to come up.
Well, Nia Jax.
Nia Jax will probably have to come up.
I think that's the one that's going to come up immediately. Like, they keep on saying there's going to be 2 waves, the initial wave and then a secondary wave. Right now, you got enough chicks to get through the women's division temporarily. Eventually, you're going to need new bodies. But I think Nia Jax, surprise drafts pick somewhere in there. Maybe she's televised, maybe not. I don't know.
I hope the whole thing is televised. I really, at this point...
Well, they have the 4 hours of coverage on the network, so it's going to be televised. It just might not be televised.
Well, when we were researching this, and we went back and watched the initial 2002 draft... They had matches in between, and it was kind of scatterbrained, and they had weird vignettes backstage. I really want them to treat this like it's a straight-up draft. I want those 2 standing across from each other for like an hour, drafting and having guys come out and...
See, that's what you want, but the general public doesn't want that, and they don't want ratings to just fall Like, people will tune in to check it out, but they want that second hour ratings to either be equal or surpass the first hour. And if you have an entire draft for an hour, you know as well as I do, those ratings are just going to...
I don't think so, because I think as you have surprises mixed in, I don't think Finn Balor is going to go number 1. I think you're going to see Finn Balor pop up in the first 10. So, I mean, there's going to be that moment where people are still waiting to see, okay, who's next? And you're starting from scratch. It's SmackDown. There's 2 hours, and it's the first live SmackDown they're doing this on. So you can't actually have guys fight, I don't think, because you don't have a SmackDown roster.
Oh, they'll figure out a way.
Well, all right. Let's just keep it rolling. So you've taken the Gold Rush. So far, in between your 2 picks, you've got the main title on Rollins over on Raw. Now you've got the IC belt on The Miz over on Raw. And you have Zack Ryder holding the U.S. belt over on SmackDown. In the 5th round, who do you have going to Raw?
Charlotte. And on the other side, the New Day. Yes, it is.
Like that. So then I think I pretty much have what you just did happening exactly the way you did, minus who you have there. I have in the 4th round The Miz taking his IC belt. And by the way, Maurice shouldn't have to be drafted. She should just automatically come with him.
Yeah, but she's not performing. She's just his wife.
Right, so that needs to be a thing. And then I think SmackDown is going to go get themselves the U.S. belt on Rusev and bring Rusev and Lana over to the SmackDown side, which would give SmackDown so far the tag team champions in New Day and the U.S. champion with Rusev, leaving Raw to have the heavyweight championship between either Rollins or Ambrose. Mm-hmm. They're going to have the IC belt over there, and they're going to have the women's championship over there. I think you're going to see 2 more belts debut. I think you're going to see a championship belt to SmackDown, and I think you're going to see a cruiserweight belt come into play.
See, I don't think they introduced the Cruiserweight belt until after they wrap up with the Cruiserweight tournament.
Yeah, I think that's how
Which is going to be in 2 months or whatever it is.
That's how it's going to go, but I think you will see that belt come into play, and you may see whoever is the opposite, whichever brand gets the Cruiserweight. Mm-hmm. I think you'll see the other brand either go get a European champion or a light heavyweight champion. I think you'll bring back one of those old belts that you used to have that means something. The one thing I don't want to see is them bring back a television title, because I don't...
Well, the history of the TV title's probably pretty more prestigious than the European Championship.
Well, the TV title doesn't apply to today's pro wrestling world.
Well, it's like the U.S. belt. If you had somebody that had to defend it every week or every couple of weeks on television and possibly have a title change hands on TV... I know that's the second time I've done that during this podcast, but it's a shocking concept. But that was the whole purpose of the television title, is to be defended on television.
Well, that's what I'm saying is, unless you consider it to be the cable TV title where it's defended outside of pay-per-views, hell, go get Zack Ryder's Internet Championship and have it only defended on network specials or pay-per-views. Call it what it is. But I think you'll see some more gold debut, because right now, if you look at where the gold sits on these, it's kind of thinning out. You don't have as many titles per show, which means you're going to actually have to go make some stories happen, and they don't seem to be able to do that. Okay, so 6th round, you've got Rollins, Cena, The Club, Miz all on Raw, Finn Balor, Dean Ambrose, Cesaro, Zack Ryder, and New Day all over on SmackDown. So in the 6th round, who's going to Raw?
Kevin Owens.
KO?
A pissed off Kevin Owens who thinks he should have been the number 1 draft pick.
Yeah, well, that's going to be pretty obvious, I guess. And that does put him with Steph and not Shane, who he's had issues with. And I kind of have a feeling that I know the answer before I ask this, but if Kevin Owens goes to Raw in the 6th round, who goes to SmackDown?
Sami Zayn.
Kind of figured like I could have written that down without even asking, but I like the structure on that. I mean, I like the way that looks. I like the way that it plays out. Now, we've got the Gold Rush done, so I believe that on mine I have all the belts taken care of. I've got the main title, the women's title, and the IC all over on Raw.
Mm-hmm.
I've got the tag titles and the U.S. title over on SmackDown. So now we kind of do get into that nitty-gritty area where we're talking about future. Maybe we're going to double dip on some divas. I can't call them divas, sorry. Maybe double dip on some women's wrestlers here. This is a good spot where you could see a Becky Lynch get picked. That's going to have to happen. There might even be like, if they do it, I want them all on Raw. But if it happens, you could see a run on like 4 picks in a row that are all just women's wrestlers.
See, you're right there with me because that's exactly what I was going to go with the next couple of rounds.
So what I think will start happening here is you'll start to see reaction picks. At least if I was writing it, I would start to, like, after you get your first 5 rounds of things that you want to happen in the way you want it to, then you start to have the sibling rivalry start to rear its ugly head where you say, like, oh, well, you've got New Day over there, so as Raw, I'm going to take the Wyatt family. So I think the Wyatts will end up at number 6. It'll be the first tag team put on the Raw roster, which then I think will cause one of those reactionary picks where if you say, okay, you're going to start dipping into my tag teams, then I'm going to start dipping into your women's wrestlers. So I think you'll see Wyatts go 1, and then I think you'll probably see, and this is where I struggle because I don't know who is better suited for it, but I'll say Becky Lynch, because even though you have someone like Paige who's had championship runs before
and troubles,
yeah, but I'll put Becky Lynch there because I think, you know, you could hear Shane saying something like that. Oh, you want to start taking my tag teams? I'll start taking your women's wrestlers, Becky Lynch. So I'll go Wyatts and Becky Lynch in the 6th round. Wyatts to Raw, Becky Lynch to SmackDown. As we get to the 7th round, who are you taking?
I'm going to take Sasha Banks
on
Raw and the Wyatts on SmackDown.
I don't like this. It's like we're...
Well, I mean, there's only so many ways you can go.
Right. So this is playing into the way... The reason I want to set up the reactionary thing was because in response to the reactionaries, like... I know we're taking a lot of time going between this and explaining ourselves. I don't think they're going to take time and explain themselves. I think there are going to be a couple moments that should be rapid fire. So I think as soon as Shane says that little, like, okay, if you're going to do that, then I'm going to do this, then I think you see Steph say something like, okay, then I'm taking Sami Zayn. So I think Sami Zayn goes to Raw, and then that forces Shane's hand into taking Kevin Owens.
Interesting.
Which puts Kevin Owens and Shane on a collision course within their own brand.
See, I don't disagree with the sentiment, but there is one thing that we're forgetting long term. Trades.
Yeah, but we don't know. Even though they've happened in the past, we don't even know the structure of how this particular draft will go because we don't know the parameters. 8th pick for you after Sasha goes to Raw. We'll only go 10 picks, by the way, because without the parameters, we don't know.
Who do I think should be top 10? Oh, I know someone. Roman Reigns.
So he does end up going to Raw, but it's not in the first few picks because they try to bury it.
Yep.
Maybe get it out of the way without anybody noticing. But, yeah, Roman to Raw.
And people will forget the Roman pick because with the 8th pick going to SmackDown, Big Cass by himself.
So I think this is probably the area where we see the run on tag teams and women's wrestlers. The way I see 8th pick going for Raw is a commodity, someone that they know will sell merch and that can perform. They're not going to light the world on fire, but I think the Usos will remain on Raw. And as a reaction to that, I think you're going to see Enzo and Cass go as a team to SmackDown, which then keeps them aligned with John Cena, and it keeps them as a tag team. And it puts Because, again, the way that I see SmackDown end up evolving is to be the cool NXT. Or then not the cool NXT. They're going to be the mainstream NXT. They're going to be the cool version of Raw and SmackDown. So they're going to get the cool guys. The indie guys are going to be over there. And then you're going to have the mainstream show. So this is the perfect pick to explain the differences. Usos to Raw, Enzo and Cass to SmackDown. I think that explains the whole thing. 9th pick to Raw after you try to sneak Roman Reigns under the radar.
With the number 9 pick, Stephanie being pissed at Shane for taking Big Cass takes Enzo.
I don't like this. I don't like this at all. You're putting bad juju on them. So,
the number 9 pick on SmackDown. I think we see another NXT surprise here. And I think we see Austin Aries.
Really? Wow. But that does, I mean, it kind of goes in line with the way that I'm looking at this being structured, where you have the cool show on SmackDown. I think Raw in the 9th round will go Cesaro. A very easy pick. I mean, whichever show he goes to, he's going to get cheered.
Yep.
And I think what it does is sets him up nicely to be able to take on The Miz for the IC belt on Raw. I think that's good for them. This is where I think we finally dip into the NXT territory as we get close to the end of the first 10. I think Finn Balor will go to SmackDown, but I don't think he's going to be a 1, 2, 3 pick. I think he's going to be 9th, where he's just inside that top 10, but he's not taking the space of other people. So after you split up one tag team with Enzo and Cass, and you've got Enzo on Raw, who else are you going to throw on Raw?
On Raw, I think Stephanie, not to be outdone by Shane, drafts Nia Jax.
You know, I got to say, I would thoroughly enjoy your draft and the way these shows are set up. I just don't think they have the stones to do it.
Will you shut up and let me pick my
sorry.
SmackDown pick?
Go ahead, SmackDown
Not
pick.
to be outdone by Stephanie. Shane picks, or Daniel Bryan, American Alpha.
Oh.
And if you notice, on my draft, women are all on one side, men are all, or tag teams are all on the other.
I like that. That's not entirely true because you got the club going at 3.
Well, I don't count them as a tag team at this point since they lose all the damn time.
The Good Brothers are a tag team, though. So I think you're going to have to start to see names get picked at this point. And we should probably take a second to talk about Brock Lesnar, where I don't feel like Brock Lesnar is going to be drafted.
And Randy Orton.
Well, that's where I was just going to go here in a second. But I wanted to bring Brock Lesnar up because I was going to bring Randy Orton up. But I don't think Brock Lesnar gets drafted because Brock Lesnar does what Brock Lesnar wants to do. And if you're Vince and you've got that much money invested in that guy, and everybody openly knows it, he's a prize fighter in more of a sense than Kevin Owens is. I think Brock remains Vince's personal brand. Brock is his own brand. And Brock will be used on pay-per-views, and he will be used on the brand in which his pay-per-view opponent will be hosted on. So, with the 9th pick, I say Randy Orton is drafted by Raw. And I say this so when Randy Orton shows up at Battleground to do his segment with Chris Jericho, which will be interrupted by Brock Lesnar, they can continue the build-up to that on Raw. And they can show Brock Lesnar clips on SmackDown because Brock Lesnar is a non-affiliated.
See, I'm with you. See, with the next pick, I was going to pick Randy Orton, the Raw, and Lesnar, the SmackDown, except Paul Heyman comes out and says, no. No one picks Brock Lesnar. Lesnar picks what show he wants.
I do enjoy that. I like that. So I think you'll see Randy Orton pick to Raw, and then I think SmackDown is going to end up getting straddled with Sheamus. Because I think that you're going...
I love how you describe it, saddled.
Well,
Sheamus is a good worker.
Insert Sheamus, Alberto Del Rio, whichever second-tier heel you want to in this area. I think you're going to need to have good heels to one side, yes?
Ooh. We're missing a heel here that neither of us has picked.
Who?
I'm from Winnipeg, you idiot.
Jericho is one that he's kind of a floating enigma, a lot like Randy Orton. I don't think Jericho... You're going to get angry Jericho either way. You're going to get pouty Jericho either way. So why not bury him in the draft a little bit and give him even more poutiness? Now, this could all change because if they come out Monday and say women's wrestling is going to be on Monday nights, which would be smart for them because after you get through the first 5 or 6 women wrestlers...
Well, hell, you only have 2 matches a night anyway, at most.
Right. So if you've got the show that has that extra hour to fill, you already need something extra there that the other show isn't going to have. Keep women's wrestling just to Raw. Put them on the grander stage and let them showcase it on Monday nights. Because really, let's try to figure this out. How many women's wrestlers do we actually see on a regular basis?
Let's see here. We got, of course, Charlotte and Dana Brooke. You got Sasha, Becky Lynch, Paige, Summer Rae. I feel
Natty.
like Natty.
I mean, who else have we seen? If you go all the way back to WrestleMania, you had a few more mixed in. You had Lana.
Oh, I know who can be it. Someone's been working in the gym recovering from her injuries.
Nikki
Bella.
So, yeah, but even if you mix in Nikki Bella...
That's a solid 10 chicks, right?
No, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's 8. And then I guess if you put a Bayley
and a Nia
Jax in there, then you have 10.
That's a good starter kit.
But that's a good start for one show. If you split it between the two, now you have 5 on one and 5 on the other. How many matches can you have?
We see the same matches every week. What are you talking about?
I don't know. I feel like the women's wrestling is way ahead of where it was, but it's not. I mean, it's not there yet. It's not, to me, enough to be split between 2 brands. Even if you bring up Asuka from NXT, that'll give you 11. There's not even that many down at NXT because once you get out of that, like, what are you gonna do? Put Ava Marie in there?
Hell yeah!
You're gonna let Lana back in there?
Hell yeah! Alicia Fox.
Fox still.
Not Naomi or whatever the hell her name is. The Usos
Naomi,
was?
yeah. When's the last time Naomi was in the ring? So I guess if you want to put those in too.
I mean, you got what is it, Tamina?
Tamina Snuka. So if you got Naomi and Tamina and Ava Marie, you can't wrestle. I guess if you go that deep onto the bench, you may have enough to do the 2 shows, but you're going to end up with a match that's like Ava Marie versus Summer Rae. And that's not what women's wrestling needs right now after all of the work that they've put into it. You want to see the Sasha and Charlotte matches. You want to see Becky Lynch and Paige.
Well, unfortunately, even throughout all of pro wrestling, not just WWE, God, people are going to hate me for saying this, there's not that many good female wrestlers.
There are, but the reason that they're good and the way that their stories work in the ring is that you have a tremendous amount of intergender wrestling going on in the indies right now. And when you have an intergender match, half of your story is already told before the bell even rings. And there used to be a few in WWE. Mm-hmm. But in today's world, I don't know that you could see an intergender match at the WWE level, even executed in the proper way that it is on the indies right now, where somebody like Candice with Joey Ryan, the world's cutest tag team, Candice is going to get the pinfall. She's going to get the finishing move. She's going to win the matches. She's going to come out on top unless she's facing the new Young Bucks.
And loses a tooth, but that's it.
But what you can't see, what WWE will not put on their TV, is a giant professional wrestler. But you know what? Let me slow down, because we just saw Roman Reigns spear Stephanie McMahon.
Yeah, but it wasn't a quote-unquote intentional spear. It was accidental because Triple H moved out of the way. You'll never see, you won't see the days where Stone Cold flips Stephanie the Bird and hits her with a stunner. Those days are gone.
Those days are long gone, and so we can't tell those stories that are being told on the indies very well on the big stage because they're just not allowed to. So
I mean, even on the indies, though, like you look at Ring of Honor, they just started a women's division, and I think they maybe have a dozen chicks to rotate in and out.
But a dozen is even, if you've got a dozen solid...
Well, they're not all solid, is my point. There's the, top-notch, and then there's ones that are developing, and then there's ones that suck, just like every organization. So we're in the same... Like I said, it's not like 100 dudes because chicks just don't want to wrestle.
I don't know, but what I see right now is I see a draft as I look back on this paper. I see a draft on your side that looks exciting as hell because this would all be stuff from your number one pick to SmackDown being Finn Balor and Zack Ryder with the U.S. belt and Austin Aries and Big Cass being separated and American Alpha in the top 10. That's exciting as hell, and that would be enjoyable to see. But I think what I see here on mine is what we've come to expect from WWE.
See, I think they've realized what people have come to expect is starting not to pay the bills.
Well, what they've come to expect, I guess, on one side of this sheet, what I've put together, like Raw, to me, this is the expected Raw. You're going to have The Shield and Charlotte and The Miz and Wyatt's and Usos and Randy Orton. Those are all the... Do any of those excite you? I mean, outside of Seth Rollins, does any of that really excite you?
I mean, I like Randy Orton. There's a few guys I like, but it's not.
But if I told you that you had an opportunity to go see a house show that was going to feature a match between Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns and The Miz and Sami Zayn and Cesaro, or you could see John Cena versus AJ Styles, Rusev versus Kevin Owens, Enzo and Cass versus The Club, and Finn Balor versus Sheamus. I mean, one of those, to me, has way more draw for someone like me, somebody who's an internet smart who reads dirt sheets. I think that's what SmackDown is. Hell, it already has an S in the name. Smarkdown should be the new... That's what it should be. You've got Smarkdown and Monday Night, I don't know, Raw, horror... I can't even come up with anything. It's that bad.
See, the thing about Vince is if he thinks there's an opportunity to shock people without crossing whatever line his company happens to have in the sand at that moment, he will take that opportunity. And I think this draft and the future of the company will be an opportunity to shock people that, because it's, start of a new era. What a better way than just by completely blowing everything up and changing people like yours expectations. And Vince has been known to do that year after year, evolving with the business.
I am so not thinking your number one SmackDown draft pick is going to happen that
Probably not.
I'm willing to pay for your pre-ordered copy of 2K17 NXT edition. If that happens, I buy you NXT 2K17.
I'm down with that.
That's how confident I am that Finn Balor is not the number one draft pick.
Well, like I said, who knows what the hell's going to happen, so I just took some random guesses, to be honest. What I would like to see, boom. But I got a feeling there's going to be a lot of stuff that happens that you're not going to expect. All the, WWE sucks. Those guys, they're going to get... I think someone's going to smack their faces and be like, look, we're just as good as we were, and it's time we shake things back up.
Now, here's the deal. We talked about how we want to see it play out and the fact that I want to see just like a solid 90 minutes of draft. We've gone through just maybe half the roster. We haven't even talked about guys like Alberto Del Rio's not on either of our lists. We really, and if we're going to split the tag teams, we haven't even talked about a lot of the tag teams. We haven't talked about the Tyler Breezes and the Goldusts and the R-Truths and the Fandangos.
See, I think teams like those are going to be the ones that are untelevised.
But do they not televise some of this?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's 4 hours on the network, so I bet, there's going to be like with the little scroller, this just in, blah, 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 and then they go back to talking about.
I think that this is an opportunity for them to have that whole 90-minute chunk of announcing somebody's name, having their music play, having them come out and shake the hand of whoever the GM, or react in a negative way, the way that a Kevin Owens or a Chris Jericho may, but you have them come out and have a reactionary piece, and they either have to take a T-shirt. I mean, how cool would that be? You have a T-shirt with the Raw or SmackDown logo, and you present it to them, and you take pictures like the NFL
they'll do
draft.
that with the drop, but they're not going to do that for Jack Swagger because no one gives a rat's ass about Jack Swagger.
But you can make somebody care at this moment if Jack Swagger is the pick that takes place right before or right after, if he's the answer pick to American Alpha. I don't know. I feel like this gives you an opportunity to get FaceTime to guys that you're going to need to build now. One of these two brands is going to need to use Jack Swagger in matches at least once every other week.
To put people over.
So get Jack Swagger's face on TV.
I just don't think like guys that are going to end up being jobbers are going to get up. Here's the Jack Swaggers and the not R-Truth because he's in the Golden Truth now, but guys like that of his ilk.
Maybe the Golden Truth doesn't exist. Maybe somebody does draft R-Truth as an individual,
and then they both become jobbers on separate shows.
All right, well, that's how we see the draft, at least the first 10 rounds laying out. I hope we get way more draft coverage than we need, and you're kind of sitting there like, I want to see a Summer Rae Becky Lynch match in between some draft picks.
Well, I think what's going to happen is like, all right, this is the SmackDown. We got our 2 draft picks. How about we let them fight it out right now for the new championship? I think there's going to be some of that going on.
Hey, if that's what you're going to do, I'm all over that. If you start the night off and in the first 90 minutes of a 2-hour show, you have the draft, and then at the end, you're going to have the number 1 and 2 picks in the draft fight it out for the SmackDown belt. Hells yes.
Or you have the top 5 rounds fight out to be the number 1, like a battle royal or a tournament. I think that's what they do with the show is as they start filling up the brackets, you start seeing like, all right, here's our guys. This is what you guys have to look forward to from here on out.
I like it, and I don't know if there's much more we can talk about without learning any structure, but that's our fantasy draft for the first 10 rounds of the upcoming WWE draft. If you disagree with us, hate us, think we're stupid, let it be known in the comments below.
And I know my draft is stupid until it comes right. Ask the Ambrose Asylum fellow over here.
Why don't you just... All right. It's the Raw Meat Podcast.
Idiot.